On your Garmin Instinct, when you choose a sport from the GPS tab, let's say climb or any activity you want. By the way, if you want to add another activity, you can always go on the plus button and from there select an activity that you want to add to your favorite activity in the white tab just right here. So for the example, we're going to go with the climb. So I'm going to select it with this button. And from here, at the very beginning, before you start any activity, well, you can see what you have as data fields on the activity. And data fields is what we're going to talk about in this video. So you see you've got by default ascent, elevation, total descent, distance, vertical speed, your actual location, heart rate, your place, time of the day, and that's what you have by default. But this is not necessarily what you want to have on this type of activity. So before you start the activity, you can press the menu button. As you can see, you've got option here if you go higher. So the up button is the menu button always. And from there, you can go on climb settings. And the great things about Garmin Watch is that at all time, if the activity is start, you can't go up to get access to this menu. But when you are on an activity, you can always press and hold the menu button to get the climb settings. So I'm gonna enter into that menu, and what we're gonna talk about in this video and see in very deeply details is the data screens. So I'm gonna select again data screens, and from here I can see all of my data screens as we've seen a little earlier. So as you see, there is when I move, there is this pen logo to say that if I press the GPS button, I will edit that tab. And if I go at the very bottom, I can also add another tab. But let's start with this first one. I'm gonna edit it. So right here, the first thing you can do is to choose your layout. So again, I select over here, and we've got different type of layout. There is always an info into that little circle. Actually, it is the earth rate, but this is something we will see how to modify later. And then you've got this one, which will be a single info screen. If I move into the menu with those two buttons, I can see that I can have, you see now it's ascent and elevation, but we will be able to modify it later. So this is a 2 info screen, 3 info screen, 3 info with a different display, and 4 info plus 1. So which is the maximum we can have on this watch. So 5 info on the same watch. I like to have it depending on the type of sport. On bicycle, it might be hard to read because you go fast and whatever. So the first tab, see, I go back, I edit. The first tab is the layout, which we just have to choose. And then you've got field. And you see field number 1, which is the heart rate, and it's illustrated into the circle as the black area. So the field 2 is this one, 3, 4, and 5. And we can also reorder. We'll come back to this later. So in the field number 1, I can choose something from different type of fields. I think we can display almost anything, but just to make sure we see all of the options, I'm gonna select an option just right here. So on the field 2, let's explain all the type of fields you can have. So there is so many type of fields that they are branded into some folders. So if you want something about your time, distance, pace, speed, heart rate, temperature, elevation, compass, navigation, and others. Let's see all of them one by one. Some are obvious and some might need some explanation. So the timer is basically the timer. When you start an activity, it starts a timer that you can pause and stop. And of course, when you start, pause, and restart, it start, stop, pause the timer. So it will broadcast the timer. When you start an activity, it starts the timer. The lap time, when you're doing an activity, some people when they are running or do some lap around something, it will broadcast the timer of the actual lap. So it kind of reset the lap timer every time you do a lap. Otherwise, it can broadcast the last time. So let's say you are running over this square, and every time you reach that spot, you press on a button to do a lap. Well, when you press lap here, it will show you the time it took you to do the last lap. The average lap time, so let's say you've done a lap of 1 minute and another lap of 2 minutes, well, your average lap time would be 1.5 minutes. The elapsed time is the time from the beginning of the activity, and this one can't be paused. So let's say you're running and you stop at a grocery store to buy something, get you a drink or something, and you pause while you go inside. Well, the elapsed time will continue and the timer will pause. So elapsed time is the time since the very beginning of the activity, including the pause. The moving time is the time you move according to the GPS. So if you stop at a red light, this will not count as a moving time. And the stop time will be the time you are stopping at red light or something like that. Next field is the distance field. So the distance will be the distance since the beginning of the activity. The lap distance will be the distance from the beginning of the lap. The last lap distance will be the distance of, you remember, the last square. So same principle as with the time, but now with the distance. And the distance exprimate into nautical distance, which is nautical miles. Next one, the pace field. So the pace, the average pace, your lap pace, so the average pace of this actual lap, and the last lap pace, which is the average pace for the last lap. And this one is done. So I come back here. This is the back button. And I go down to speed fields. So the speed, depending of what type of speed you have choose, metric or imperial, this will show on the format you have choose. So kilometer per hour or miles per hour. The average speed, the lap speed, the last lap speed, it's again the same thing. The maximum speed will be the maximum speed you have run or ride or whatever you do as activity on this activity. So maybe you go down a hill and ride at 65 kilometers per hour. This is the maximum speed that will broadcast until you reach 66 or 67. The nautical speed, the max nautical speed, same principle as the max speed. The average nautical speed, so it's the same thing as the speed but expressed in nautical speed. Average moving speed, this one is interesting. Instead of being the average speed. The average speed will decline at a red light, for example, but the average moving speed will kind of pause when you are at a red light. And the average overall speed, well, that's another funny difference. The average overall speed will count if you pause. So if, by example, with the average speed, if you go at the grocery store to buy a drink and you pause your activity, this will pause your average speed as well, but the average overall speed will continue to calculate your overall speed, average speed, even if you pause the activity. Then you've got the vertical speed. This one is interesting when you are climbing. This is basically the number of meter you climb per minute or per hour, depending of how you set up your watch. So if you climb a hill, you might go at a horizontal speed of 10 kilometers per hour, but climbing 15 meters per minute. Next field, the heart rate fields. So your actual heart rate, the average heart rate, your max heart rate, so same thing as the speed. What was your maximum heart rate? Your HR zone is the heart rate zone. Garmin display it in 5 zones. The first one, which is the low, so on rest mode. The second one is a medium low. The third one is a kind of active. 4 is a high zone, and the 5th is like the maximum zone. This one is interesting. Instead of broadcasting your beats per minute, it will broadcast the percentage of beats per minute of your maximum heart rate per minute to your age. So if, by example, your maximum heart rate is 200 beats per minute and you are going at 150 beats per minute, you are at 75%. The percentage HRR is a bit different. The HRR is for heart rate reserve. Basically what it is, remember I said if your heartbeat is at 150 and your maximum is 200, you are at 75%. But this is not exactly true, because if your minimum heart rate is, let's say, 50, because you can't really take your heart down to 0 because you die. So this one, instead of taking the difference between 0 and the maximum, will take the difference between your minimum and maximum. So let's say your minimum is 50 and your maximum is 200, and you're running at 150 beats per minute. Well, this time, instead of being 75% of your maximum heartbeat, this will be 66% of your heart rate reserve. The average heart rate percentage max will be kind of the same thing of the average heart rate, but expressed into HR max. And this one is the same thing with the heart rate reserve. The lap HR will be your average heart rate for this lap. And this one is the average heart rate reserve for this lap. And this one will be your heart rate percentage max for this lap. And again, the exact same thing for the last lap. And this one is not related about the clock, it's really about the heart rate. You remember the HR zone. So this will broadcast the time you pass in each zone. This one probably better be displayed on a single screen. Then, next field, temperature. The actual temperature recorded by the watch. and the 24-hour maximum temperature in the last 24 hours, and the same thing for the minimum temperature in the last 24 hours. Then the elevation fields. Okay, this field is a funny one, and I will go over a draw to explain it to you. Okay, let's start with the draw. Okay, so let's say you are starting an activity at 500 meter, and then you climb up to 700, and then you go down to 600, and then you climb to 650. So in this case, the average ascent will be here from 500 to 700, you climb 200 minus 100, so 100 plus 50. So the average ascent of this activity is 150. So the descent will be the same principle, but on the descent. The max ascent, however, is very different. This will depend on the time you move between each point. The max ascent is the maximum number of meters you have climbed in a single minute. And then we've got the max descent, which is the same thing for the descent. The elevation is your actual elevation based to sea level. The total ascent is also known as elevation gain. So in this example, from here to here you have gained 200 meters, then you have descent, so that doesn't count, and then you have gained 50 meters. So in total for this activity, you will have gained 250 meters. This is the total ascent. In the case of the total descent, well, the only time you have descent here is from here to here, so the total descent will be 600. And then we've got the lap ascent. So this is the same thing as we have seen in the previous minute, but for the lap, again, same thing. The minimum elevation in this scenario is 500, which is the start point, and the maximum elevation, this one, would be 700, which is the highest point of elevation you have been. And then we've got the GPS elevation, so this is your elevation based on the GPS, but you should never use this one. The elevation right here is based on the GPS and recalibrate with the barometer. So the elevation is more precise than the GPS elevation. The glide ratio, this one is funny and maybe a little hard to explain. It will display your horizontal distance against your vertical distance. So if you have travel 10 kilometers in horizontal but climb 1 kilometer on this one, it will display 10 on 1. Yeah. The grade is the grade of the hill you are in at the moment. So 10%, 15%, something like that. 0 is flat and 90 is a wall. So the grade of the hill you are right now. Next field, let's remove that drawing, will be the compass field. So heading, so the direction you are going to, the GPS heading and the compass heading. What is the difference? The compass heading will be based on the compass into the watch. So if I point into this direction, am I directly to north, northeast, and east. And the GPS heading will not be based on the compass, it will be based on the direction you're going. So even if the watch point north but is moving to east, this will broadcast moving east, even if the watch point the north. And the heading is a kind of smart one. So if you are stop, the GPS won't be able to show your heading, because if you are at a stop point and you're not moving, GPS can tell you in which direction you are going. So heading will broadcast the compass heading if you are stop, and the GPS heading if you are moving. So go with heading. Navigation field. Navigation is when you are on a route to a point. Most of the point we got into this fields need to have the navigation turned on. If you are on an activity, navigation is not by default on. You are on navigation when you are traveling on a route or you are moving to a waypoint. I will talk about those things into other video you can see on my channel. If you look in the description, I will put a link to all of my tutorial on the Garmin Instinct, and you should be able to find one about the navigation. So distance remaining, so the distance you have to travel up to the end of the route. The estimate total distance, so let's say you have create a route of let's say 1 kilometer, but you have go off the route and come back. This will adjust the total distance estimated for your all activity. VMG for velocity made good. I don't know who is using that, but this will broadcast the speed at which you are closing on a destination along a route. So in this example, this could be your last point, and it will show the speed you are moving to that destination. Well, I don't know who used that. Vertical speed to target, so the speed you are moving to your target in elevation. Bearing is the orientation you need to go to reach your target in straight line. The course will show you the information of the course you are doing at the moment. So distance travel, distance remaining, those kind of things. Off course, so if you create a route, a course, let's say this is 1 kilometer, and your route is this, and you move up there, it will tell you that you are 500 meters away from your route. So the distance you have to travel right or left to your original course if you are off course. Vdist to dest. This is the vertical distance to destination. So if you're climbing a mountain, this might be interesting. You may want to know that you have 5 kilometers left to walk, but 300 meters to climb. The glide ratio destination, so the distance you have to walk over the distance you have to climb to your destination. ETA is the estimated time of arrival. So if it's 10 o'clock and you have 1 hour left to walk, your ETA will be 11 o'clock. And the ETE is the estimated time remaining. So the famous 1 hour you have to walk, this what will be displayed over here. Destination waypoint, this is the distance between you and the final waypoint. Next waypoint will broadcast which is the next waypoint on your route, and this will display the distance between you and this next waypoint. ETA to next, will display the time of the day you will arrive at your next waypoint. Fun fact, this will display it in the local time zone. So if you are crossing a time zone on your route, it will display the time of the time zone that the waypoint is, and time to the next waypoint, which is the number of minutes or hours you have to travel to the next waypoint. And finally, we've got the other fields in which we find calories. Do I need to explain what it is? The battery level of the watch, GPS, which is the GPS signal that the watch receives, the number of laps you have done, the time of the next sunrise, and the time of the next sunset for your actual position. The time of the day of your actual position, the ambient pressure, so it will display the pressure that the watch senses, and the barrel pressure will be the pressure it receives calibrated to the elevation. So if you ever calibrated your barometer, it will display the calibrated pressure, and the ambient pressure is the simple pressure that the watch senses. And we've seen them all. So if we come back here, we can see some other things now. Now that we have seen all the data fields that we can put into this watch, there is some other fields that remain to be seen. So if we navigate through those page, I can see here that that's another two fields window with distance, vertical speed, and heart rate. And if I go down, this is simply a one data field page with the location. So if there is a data field that you want to have big on your watch, simply put it on a one page field and it will appear bigger. On this kind of page, it's the same thing. There's a layout that have been chosen. And you've got the field number 1, which is heart rate, and the field 2, which is location. But there's also some page that are a bit special. This one, which is the HR zone, if I go into that one, I can only reorder or remove it because it's a special page. And there is some of them like that. This is the navigation page. Basically here we have this length represent 300 meters on the map, and you've got your location, the way you the direction you are heading. So well, actually this is pointing north, so meaning that north is that way, and you've got your waypoint on the map, and if you move it will trace a line. This is simply the time of the day, so that's a data field with on a single page, and you can add some more fields. So if I go on add, you can set custom data, so this will be a data fields that you will be able to choose between 1 and 5 field. You can add a virtual partner. Basically what this is that you will set a speed which is strangely minimum of 6 kilometer per hour, no 6.5 45 kilometers per hour, which is the minimum, and when you start you will be able to compete within a virtual ghost. What do we have like other special page? You've got a compass page, so you see now I'm pointing northwest, and like that I'm pointing west, and like that. So that's a virtual compass. Oops. Data strings. If I go at the last one and add another one, you can have an elevation graph. So this will be the time, and you're gonna have a graph of your elevation for the last hours with the actual elevation. If you try to modify it, you can't. You can just reorder it if you want to put it higher on the list. Maybe if you are climbing, that's the first thing you want to see, or maybe the second one, or just remove it. Otherwise, if we had another page, you can add music control for your phone. I never use that one, but yeah, that's the music control page. And there is no other. So you can add as many page as you want. Well, maybe there's a limit, but as you can see, you can put a lot of page. What I probably need to say is that you won't reach the limit if there is one before you put all the information you need. So that's how it is. When you're done, you can come back and you are back to your activity page. Actually, the activity was not start, but I can start it. And remember that you can always do that even if you are on an activity. So if I come back to climb settings, even if the activity is start, I can replace the data fields. So this is it. Thank you for watching. I hope it helps. If yes, please smash the like button. If you are planning to buy this watch, you can see my link in the description. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you can find me back easily next time you need help. If you want to see my other tutorial about this watch, you can see my playlist just right here. And you can also find me on my main channel just right there. Thank you for watching. Take care and see ya.